Chapter 476. The mission to head to the Death God Castle. Even if it was a god-level mission, it would be considered normal. How could he have been assigned to a high-level mission? If a bronze or silver plate mercenary group were to accept such a mission, wouldn't that be sending them to their deaths? The mercenary guild would never make such a mistake. Moreover, what's even more strange is, why would Yu Qipeng accept this mission? Yiqing Luo rubbed her chin as she slowly combed through her thoughts. The Iron Blood warriors are still conserving their energy and recruiting their troops. But today they hurriedly rushed over to register their mercenary group. Their motive is for this mission. Apparently they already knew what the mission is. Knowing that he has to go to the Death God Castle to steal the exquisite pagoda, but he still chose this mission. This also means that he is extremely confident in this mission. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as a glint flashed past her eyes. That is to say, there are other ways to complete this mission. Even a mercenary group like the Predators has the confidence to complete this mission. For us, we shouldn't be able to. You are not allowed to go. The three cold words seemed to be wrapped in frost, freezing Yiqing Luo. This voice shocked Yiqing Luo. She turned her head in shock and looked at the man beside her. When she met the man's cold, black eyes that were like molten obsidian, all her words were stuck in her throat. He was angry. Yiqing Luo had never seen Zhou Xian so angry before. Just a pair of eyes was enough to make a person not even dare to make a sound. Xian. After a long while, Yiqing Luo braced herself and moved her little hand over bit by bit, grabbing onto Zhou Xian's wrist. She knew what Zhou Xian was angry about. Death God Castle was too dangerous. It was so dangerous that one could easily lose their life if they were not careful. The World Group's people were not strong to the point where they could come and go as they pleased in Death God Castle. Zhou Xian was worried about her, worried that she would be too stubborn and insist on completing this task. But she was not willing to give up on this rare mission. For Yu Qipeng to so confidently accept this task, there must be a way to complete it. What Yu Qipeng could do, she could definitely do it too. There was no time limit for this mission. It was not impossible for her to spend some time and ask around. Xian, there's no room for discussion. Zhou Xian's voice was cold as he suddenly stood up. Lil Luo, don't force me to bring you to the Imperial Palace. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately strode out and left the guest room. When Yiqing Luo chased after him, there were many people outside, but Zhou Xian was nowhere to be seen. If he didn't want her to find him, she couldn't find him no matter what. Yiqing Luo's fingers were clenched so tightly that her round nails were embedded into her flesh. The atmosphere turned cold in an instant. Qiao Jin walked to the door and placed one hand on Yiqing Luo's shoulder as he patted lightly. The Overlord is worried about you. Death God Castle is indeed too dangerous, and even if the Overlord is protecting you, there's no way to take care of everyone. That's right, Qing Luo, if the World Group were to enter Death God Castle together, if one of us is restricted, then there's a possibility that the entire group would be restricted. We all know your personality, much less the Arch. Yan Xiaoyi also followed over as she looked at Yiqing Luo's despondent look as she sighed softly. Just based on one day of interaction, they could feel that Zhou Xian really loved Yiqing Luo. His worry and concern for her didn't need any proof. Chapter 477. Although along the way they did not see Zhou Xian make a move. But Yan Xiaoyi and the others absolutely believed that if they really met an opponent whom Yiqing Luo was unable to contend against, Zhou Xian would definitely be the first to block in front of Yiqing Luo to protect her. If the place Yiqing Luo wanted to go to had exceeded the protection range which he could predict, Zhou Xian would never allow her to go. Even if Zhou Xian could guarantee Yiqing Luo's safety. But as long as one of the other brothers was injured, Yiqing Luo would definitely not wash her hands of this. I know. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and lowered her eyelids slightly. I know he's worried about me. You know he's worried about you. He's not angry at you for no reason. Why are you still pulling a long face? Qiao Jin suddenly squeezed the hand on her shoulder. Don't pull a long face. The Arch can't bear to be angry with you. Jinzi, are you looking for a fight? Yiqing Luo was in so much pain that she drew in a breath of cold air, as she unhappily swatted away Qiao Jin's hand and retreated a few steps, massaging her shoulder. I'm advising you. Yiqing Luo's hand, which was massaging her shoulder, gradually stopped. She bit her lower lip and said, I know he's worried about me, but are you guys willing to give up on the mission that's already in your hands? Even a team of Wuxia's level has confidence. I feel that, if we properly investigate, there might be a way to complete the mission without harming our lives. Yiqing Luo's voice had just stopped. Suddenly, he heard a clear and sweet voice that carried a hint of coquettishness, but it was completely emotionless. Qing Luo. It was Mo Ying who had not spoken a single word ever since they left the devil class. She was dressed in a black outfit that wrapped around her petite body. There was actually a hint of mischievousness and cuteness in her. 2 small black lumps hung down from the 2 sides of his shoulders. Following Mo Ying's footsteps, he could hear the jingle of the bell on her wrist. If it were you, you would also stop the arch. She looked up, her voice flat and emotionless. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled as her pupils suddenly widened. That was right. Think about it from another perspective. If Zhou Xian were to take part in a mission with unknown dangers and a high mortality rate, she would never allow Zhou Xian to participate. Against the fear of the unknown, if he was alone, he could still give it a try. Now they had each other, someone they cared about. No matter what, he could not bear to use his life as a wager. Don't we have 3 days off? Since we've registered our mercenary group today, let's book a restaurant to celebrate tonight. We can also take this opportunity to think about whether or not we should continue with this mission. Qiao Jin saw Yiqing Luo's expression and gradually resumed his smile. He immediately spoke up to ease the current atmosphere. Yan Xiaoyi nodded and said, 3 days of vacation, no rush, no rush. Today the 2 of you should calm each other down. Tomorrow you will also calm down. If you still insist on doing this mission tomorrow, we'll think of a way to convince the Arch. Convince. Once Zhou Xian had decided on something, even she would not be able to convince him. If Zhou Xian wasn't willing, she absolutely could not take a single step into Death God Castle. Just like what Mo Ying said, Zhou Xian did not allow her to go to Death God Castle. Just like how she did not allow Zhou Xian to go to dangerous places, it was the same logic. Putting herself in his shoes, she could understand Zhou Xian's feelings. Chapter 478. This mission was delayed because of this. Yiqing Luo went to look for Yu Ping to probe for news while the World Group's other youngsters packed up their things and returned to Yan Xiaoyi's mansion. Mo Hanshang naturally followed along to the mansion. With the addition of a new member, Qiao Jin lent a set of clothes to Zhou Xian and the team's clothes were reduced by a few sets. After he took Mo Hanshang's measurements, he went out to find someone to make a few sets of the World Group's uniform. The Iron Blood Warrior mercenary group was gloomy. Yu Peng's face was filled with hostility. As he walked, he gritted his teeth. Duke Jing followed by his side and his hand was already bandaged properly as it hung in front of his chest. Yu Peng, don't worry. This Duke will definitely let Uncle Monarch take revenge for this Duke. Duke Jing lowered his head as he took a look at his wrist. The pain of being broken still lingered in his bones. Just thinking about it made him feel a dull pain in his hand. When I get back, I'll tell Uncle Monarch about what happened today. It's just a mercenary union. As long as I give the order, Uncle Monarch will definitely send troops to destroy the mercenary union. Duke Jing raised his head proudly as he had already imagined the scene of him saying these words in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to act on it. Idiot. A low reprimanding voice could be heard through gritted teeth. Duke Jing's brows creased as he stared towards the direction of the voice. Yu Peng, what did you say? Yu Peng's heart was filled with frustration. For the sake of the predators, he had spent so much time and poured in all his efforts. He wanted to soar into the sky after registering as a mercenary group. But he didn't expect that a group of young girls who were still wet behind the ears would disrupt all his plans. Not only did the predators not soar to the top, but they also became a joke in the eyes of all the mercenary groups, losing all face. He was the young master of the Yuchi family, the leader of the Iron Blood Warriors. But he had to apologize to a little girl. Bowing down to a young boy. All these were all thanks to that young lass, that Mo Hanshang. Filled with anger and unwillingness, Duke Jing, this brainless fool, was still chattering away beside his ears. Yu Peng felt increasingly irritated. I say, you're a... The moment he said that, Yu Peng suddenly came back to his senses. His eyes were gloomy and cold as he stared coldly at Duke Jing for some time, and the vicious aura around him gradually dissipated a little. There's something that Duke Jing doesn't know about. When Yu Qipeng opened his mouth once again, his voice had already reverted back to his usual gentleness and calmness. The Mercenary Association is spread across the 4 continents of Nirvana Realm, and every main city has a Mercenary Association branch. Does Duke Jing know what this means? Duke Jing's face sunk as he was still bearing a grudge against Yu Qipeng for scolding him earlier. He snorted coldly and turned his face away, looking very much like a child throwing a tantrum. Yu Qipeng restrained the impatience and disgust in his eyes and continued to explain. This means that the influence of the Mercenary Association in the Nirvana Realm is absolutely not inferior to the 4 great profounder clans. It's not just the 4 great profounder clans that have to be amiable before the Mercenary Association. Even the monarchs of the 4 continents have to give the Mercenary Association some face. In other words, even the 4 great profound practitioner clans and the monarch had to give face to the Mercenary Association. Even if he asked the monarch to send troops to the Mercenary Association, the monarch would absolutely not agree. Chapter 479. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. Yu Qipeng spat out these few words from the slits of his teeth as his eyes were masked with a layer of viciousness. He clenched his fists tightly. For the Iron Blood Warriors, we must endure this grievance. Mentioning the Iron Blood Warriors, Duke Jing's expression eased up slightly. If we want to develop the Iron Blood Warriors, we must rely on the Mercenary Association's power. Duke Jing, it's all right to suffer a little grievance now. One day, we will get back at them. Saying that, Yu Qipeng seemed to have thought of something as a sneer of ridicule flashed past his eyes. They won't be complacent for long. They thought that by snatching that high-grade rare mission from my hands, they would be able to complete that mission. That mission, other than me, no one else is able to complete it. Yu Qipeng's few words had already coaxed Duke Jing into submission. Now that he heard about the mission, Duke Jing's heart was filled with doubts. What mission is that? It's because of this mission that you're in such a hurry to bring everyone here to register the mercenary group. If it wasn't for the fact that Yu Qipeng was in a hurry to register the mercenary group, they would have spent some time in the marketplace to subdue Yiqing Luo and the other young ladies. Those young ladies wouldn't have appeared in the mercenary group. Iron Blood Warriors wouldn't have to face today's predicament. Yu Qipeng gave a cold laugh. High-grade rare mission. As long as we complete that mission, our ordinary mercenary group will be able to upgrade to a bronze plate mercenary group. No matter how ignorant Duke Jing was, he had understood everything about the mercenary group. Naturally, he understood how difficult it was for a mercenary group to upgrade. One mission and they would be able to upgrade to bronze plate immediately. No wonder Yu Qipeng was so concerned. If that mission was snatched away by the world group, wouldn't they be able to upgrade faster than us? Want to complete that mission? Just based on them. Yu Qipeng's lips twitched in disdain. Following that, his gaze looked towards Duke Jing. If they don't accept the mission within 3 days, that mission will eventually return to our hands. These few days, just pay close attention to the Mercenary Association's mission acceptance wall. This high-grade rare mission, we are determined to get it. Knowing that this mission would be able to upgrade to a bronze plate mercenary group, Duke Jing was also attentive. The moment a new official took up his post, he received his first mission. Duke Jing immediately stopped his chest and raised up that uninjured hand as he replied seriously, "All right, this Duke will definitely not take my eyes off this mission." There was also a rule for the Mercenary Union to accept missions. After accepting a mission, if the mercenary group did not confirm to accept the mission, it would be considered as giving up on the mission after 3 days. That mission scroll would also become an ordinary scroll. He would no longer receive any rewards from the Mercenary Union. This mission would then be returned to the Mercenary Union's mission receiving wall and accepted by other mercenary groups. Yu Qipeng looked at the delighted Duke Jing and a trace of cold smile flashed past his eyes. He wiped away the disdain towards Duke Jing in his eyes and retracted his vision. The two of them did not notice that a slender figure was standing on a treetop in the darkness. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her lips curled into a smile which didn't look like a smile. Sure enough, her guess was right. The reason why Yuqi Ping registered his mercenary group today was because of this high-level rare mission. He was very confident about this mission. This kind of confidence, where did it come from? Could it be that Yuqi Peng was really able to come and go as he pleased in Death God Castle unscathed and even take away the exquisite pagoda? Chapter 480. It was absolutely impossible for Yuqi Ping to have any relations with the guards in Death God Castle. He could coerce and bribe the Mercenary Association's guards to intercept Yiqing Luo. But it was absolutely impossible to use the same method to make Death God Castle's guards open a backdoor for him. Then, there was one last possibility. Exquisite pagoda wasn't in Death God Castle. Or perhaps, it was in Yuqi Peng's hands. If that was the case, then things would be easy. Looked like to complete this mission they had to start from Yuqi Peng. After Yuqi Peng and the rest returned to Three Springs City, they went their separate ways. Duke Jing had suffered a huge humiliation today and couldn't wait to complain to Uncle Monarch. As for the other mercenary soldiers, their morale had been greatly stimulated and all of them revealed an exhausted look as they were sent back to the Iron Blood Warriors' main camp to rest. Yuqi Peng headed straight for the Yuqi residence. His expression was gloomy as his entire body emitted a terrifying vicious qi. The attendants and maids who went up to welcome him immediately avoided him when they saw him from afar, not even daring to greet him. Yuqi Peng's courtyard was located at the south side of the Yuqi residence, and it was the biggest courtyard in the residence. Yiqing Luo stopped outside the courtyard. Her vision was fixed on this courtyard as her slender brows creased tightly into a bundle. When she first met Yuqi Peng, that disgusting feeling came again. There seemed to be something in this courtyard. There was something which made her extremely uncomfortable. In her mind, Old Man Song's voice suddenly rang. I had always felt that this Yuqi Peng was extremely strange. Now that I see this courtyard, I discover that this courtyard is even stranger. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and pressed it against her chest, suppressing this uncomfortable feeling. It was indeed very strange. So strange that all the pores on her body opened up. Don't go in. Old Man Song's voice was solemn. This feeling is too strange. I'm unable to sense the exact source of this feeling. Strange, simply too strange. It's too late. Indeed it was too late. While Yiqing Luo was conversing with Old Man Song, her vision had been paying attention to Yuqi Peng. After Yuqi Peng entered the courtyard, the vicious qi which he emitted became even thicker. Then, as if he had lost all his strength, he staggered and half fell to the ground. His hands were on the ground and his head was lowered, buried in his hair. After that there was no more movement. Then at the same time Old Man Song told her not to go in. Yuqi Peng, who had not moved for a long time, suddenly turned his head. Under the strands of hair on his face, a pair of penetrating eyes, like an icy cold venomous snake, tightly coiled around Yiqing Luo. Yuqi Peng still did not move. But Yiqing Luo knew. He saw her. Those eyes were eerily cold. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with fear. Those eyes. That gaze was definitely not Yuqi Peng. That was not a gaze that Yuqi Peng could have. This knowledge made Yiqing Luo's entire body turn cold. For the first time in her life, Yiqing Luo had this kind of fearful mentality. That kind of gaze was too terrifying. Oh no, little girl. Old Man Song's voice suddenly became louder, his tone was filled with panic. He is not Yuqi Peng. This old man finally knows why this courtyard is so strange. Yiqing Luo gave a bitter laugh. She had guessed that this person was not Yuqi Peng. To put it more accurately, after entering this courtyard, this body was no longer Yuqi Peng's soul. But even if she knew this horrifying truth, Yiqing Luo had no way to leave. She believed. Chapter 481. Just what kind of secret was hidden in this courtyard? Just what kind of power was attached to Yuqi Peng's body? It was a feeling that made people feel disgusted with just a glance. He had a pair of eyes that made one's scalp go numb and body go cold. The soul in Yuqi Peng's body. That power was definitely not simple. Old Man Song, if I were to display teleportation, would I be able to leave the Yuqi residence? Yiqing Luo congealed her senses as she asked in her heart. No. Old Man Song interrupted her without hesitation. You can't use your secret technique. If you're discovered by the dark forces, they'll definitely discover that the Azure Dew bracelet is in your hands. Dark forces? Yiqing Luo's expression changed. What you mean is that energy in this courtyard is from the dark forces? Yes, the strange aura in this courtyard comes from the dark forces. It's exactly the same as the mysterious yin qi on your fourth sister. Old man Song's tone was extremely solemn. Girl, if the dark forces are involved, you'll be in trouble. Yiqing Luo had experienced the power of the dark forces from Yiqing Ling. Yiqing Ling had only taken a handful of items from the dark forces, and she who had her profound jade heart destroyed was able to display the strength of a cultivator. As for Yiqing Qian, she could also make use of the dark forces' power to successfully break through to the earth profound grade. This was enough to show how powerful and mysterious this power was. Yiqing Luo had never dared to underestimate the dark forces. But what made Yiqing Luo puzzled was the dark forces were a dark existence in the Nirvana realm. In the eyes of many, this was an evil place. They were the aliens that had been banished from the Nirvana realm. Why did so many people choose to cooperate with the dark forces? It was understandable that Yiqing Ling and Yiqing Qian would seek help from the dark forces. But why would Yu Qipeng be involved with the dark forces? Recently, the actions of the dark forces have become more and more rampant. Old man Song sighed worriedly. Logically speaking, the people of the Nirvana realm looked down on those who hid in the dark. If they really met, they would only forcefully expel the dark ones from the Nirvana realm. But more and more profound practitioners chose to accept the power of darkness. The dark forces were getting restless recently. After all, they were carrying out some kind of plan. The world might not be peaceful anymore. Going against him head-on, I have no chance of winning. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. She stared at Yu Qipeng, who was still lying on the ground, not moving at all. He was still using that pair of sharp eyes to stare intently at her. The current Yu Qipeng was too strange. Since she couldn't use her secret technique, she couldn't escape even if she wanted to. What should she do in this situation? Old man Song naturally understood Yiqing Luo's current physique and profound grade the best. Yiqing Luo indeed didn't have the ability to go head-to-head with Yu Qipeng. Lass, is there any way to contact Dmo Xian? If Dmo Xian was here, just a Yu Qipeng, even if it was Yu Qipeng who had attached himself to the dark forces, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she slowly shook her head. It had always been Dmo Xian looking for her. She had never specially looked for Dmo Xian, let alone contacting him. Old man Song remained silent for a moment. Yiqing Luo only felt a scorching heat on her wrist, as though it was burning her wrist. She immediately raised her hand, and on her left wrist, a circle of cherry blossom runes appeared indistinctly. The red flowing light kept flashing. What was moving was tiny wisps of flames jumping in joy. Chapter 482. Yu Qipeng moved. When Yiqing Luo raised her wrist, Yu Qipeng moved. Perhaps it was because of the red stream of light on Yiqing Luo's wrist which gave Yu Qipeng a sense of threat. Yu Qipeng's palms slapped out a swift and fierce palm wind. The surrounding sand and dust were all lifted up by this airflow. His aura was like 10,000 layers of wind and waves that could devour mountains and rivers. Yiqing Luo reacted in time, and with a leap, her figure was like lightning as she avoided that palm wind. He leaped into the air, and with a few teleportation steps he retreated a long distance. Not knowing if it was a misperception, the killing intent in Yu Qipeng's eyes seemed to have become even more intense. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo's reaction, Yu Qipeng's arms slid like a snake as a whirlwind rose beneath his feet. His loose robe fluttered in the strong wind. Following that, an even more powerful palm wind swept over. Yiqing Luo's feather fan moved, intending to borrow the power of her profound qi dance to block the pressure from this palm wind. Suddenly she heard Old Man Song's stern shout, "Girl, let's go." The burning sensation on his wrist became more and more obvious. The circle of cherry blossoms was like a tattoo branded on her wrist. The fragmented, enchanting red light formed a complicated totem. Old Man Song's voice paused. Yiqing Luo only felt an inexhaustible energy diffusing from the cherry blossoms. It was Old Man Song who was helping her. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched into a fist as her feet stepped onto that set of footwork. In a split second, like a bolt of lightning, her figure had already arrived at the walls of the Yuchi Manor's entrance. She could not use the teleportation secret technique. But she could still use this set of footwork from her previous life. If she were to directly use her footwork, she might not be able to avoid Yuqi Peng's Qijin. Fortunately, Old Man Song had used the power of the Azure Dew bracelet to protect her. Before Yiqing Luo left the Yuqi residence, she turned her head towards that strange courtyard. At the opened courtyard door, Yuqi Peng is standing there with a pair of sinister eyes filled with killing intent staring at her. Seeing her stop, Yuqi Peng's eyes flashed and he strode forward as if he wanted to catch up to her. Yiqing Luo's heart skipped a beat and with a leap she flipped down from the top of the wall. When he saw the courtyard from the corner of his eyes, Yuqi Peng stood at the entrance of the courtyard. His face was filled with rage and a vicious aura overflowed. However, his legs were pressed against the door of the courtyard, and he did not have the slightest intention to catch up. When Yiqing Luo returned to the mansion, her body was still cold and stiff. Qiao Jin and the others gathered around to ask about the results. Yiqing Luo shook her head. What I can confirm is, Yuqi Peng indeed has a way to complete the mission. I'm guessing that there's a possibility that the exquisite pagoda is with him. Impossible. And Pan tilted her head as she took out a small booklet from her bosom and flipped a few pages. I specially went to investigate on matters regarding Death God Castle. As long as an item is placed in the Death God Castle, unless the original owner of the item went to retrieve it, otherwise, the exquisite pagoda would definitely not be in the hands of enemies outside of the Death God Castle. Then what if the owner of the exquisite pagoda collaborated with Yuqi Peng? Yan Xiaoyi raised a hypothesis. That's even more impossible. The exquisite pagoda was a rare treasure that was recorded in the mysterious treasures record. Cooperating with Yuqi Peng is equivalent to giving the exquisite pagoda to the person who gave the mission. This kind of losing deal, who would be willing to do it? One must know that the world's rare treasures which were recorded in the mysterious treasures record were all things which were hard to find in the world. Who would be willing to hand it over to others? When Yiqing Luo heard that, her expression didn't loosen up at all. Chapter 483. Qiao Jin's expression congealed. You mean? Just a guess. After all, if we do this, it's too obvious and the Mercenary Association isn't a fool. Yiqing Luo nodded her head slightly, acknowledging Qiao Jin's guess. Alright, I'll go check on it later. If the one who issued the mission was related to the owner of the exquisite pagoda, then this was a huge conspiracy. Not only would it allow Yuqi Peng to gain, the exquisite pagoda would also return to the original owner's hands, and in the end, they would be able to seek compensation from Death God Castle for the theft. There was a possibility that the entire Mercenary Association would be implicated in this. From then on, the Mercenary Association would be suppressed. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her eyes contained a deep meaning. There was one more important point. If she hadn't guessed wrongly, that energy which occupied Yuqi Peng's body was still unable to leave Yuqi Peng's courtyard. Yuqi Peng only started to change after he entered the courtyard. After he discovered Yiqing Luo, he only stood on the same spot and struck out his palm wind attack. And after she speedily climbed over the wall and left, he had no intention to chase after her. Yuqi Peng had already made a soul exchange with the dark forces. After she discovered this secret, shouldn't he chase up to her and silence her? If it was Yuqi Peng, if it was the dark forces' energy, even if she had Old Man Song's help, it wasn't impossible for him to chase up to her. But Yuqi Peng didn't leave that courtyard. Lass, your thinking is very correct. Old Man Song sighed softly as though he recalled something. The reason why the dark forces are called as the dark forces is because that bunch of people in the dark forces use the dark arts which are intolerable in this world. Like your eldest sister, fourth sister, Yuqi Peng and the others, if they wanted to cooperate with the dark forces, they would have to fork out an equivalent price to exchange for power. Yuqi Peng used his own soul to make the exchange. Yuqi Peng's courtyard should be the place where the dark forces' energy resides. Over there, the dark forces' energy can freely control Yuqi Peng's body. But if he leaves the courtyard, the dark forces will leave Yuqi Peng. Speaking of this, Old Man Song's voice turned gloomy as he revealed some worries. Do you still remember your fourth sister being controlled by that profound Yin Qi long sword? Yiqing Luo naturally remembered. That was the first time she came into contact with the dark forces and the power of the dark forces. If Yu Qipeng uses this power that is used for trading and attaches it to something, he can also use the power of the dark forces outside of the courtyard. When Old Man Tsong's words fell, Yi Qingluo's heart thumped. This was the same as Yi Qingling holding onto that long sword from the dark forces. Under the situation where her profound jade heart was destroyed, she could still exert her profound energy and launch an attack. However, such a method could easily cause the host's physical body to be completely devoured. This was probably the reason why Yu Qipeng could only allow the dark forces to attach themselves to him in his own courtyard. Yu Qipeng does not wish to bear the consequences of being devoured. Lass, you have to be more careful during this period of time. There are suddenly so many people around you who have made deals with the dark forces. I'm afraid the dark forces will target you. I need to raise my profound rank to the Earth Profound Realm as soon as possible. Old Man Tsong lowered his voice, his tone revealing a bit of helplessness. Originally he thought that by Yi Qingluo's side he could slowly guide her bit by bit, consolidate his own foundation and cultivate profound qi. Chapter 484. Based on Yi Qingluo's current ability, she could only barely stand firm in this world. When Old Man Tsong thought of his own mission, he suddenly felt that he still had a long way to go. Qingluo. Long Yunzhan, who was seated on the main seat, suddenly opened his mouth and called out Yi Qingluo's name. Yi Qingluo kept her thoughts as she congealed her gaze towards him. Are we going to give up on this mission? Long Yunzhan's voice was extremely light, and no one could tell what he was feeling. Yi Qingluo was slightly stunned as she narrowed her eyes. Should he give up? She did not know the answer to this question. Di Zun disagrees. Long Yunzhan's index finger lightly tapped on the table. The thumping sound was like a drum beating on everyone's heart. Ripples that resembled flowing water flickered in those azure blue eyes. Faintly, an electric current flashed through them. There's a very strange feeling coming from Yu Qipeng. As a human dragon, Long Yunzhan's perception was much sharper than that of humans. When he first saw Yu Qipeng, Long Yunzhan sensed that kind of dangerous aura from Yu Qipeng. He's too dangerous. If this mission involves others, our team won't be able to withstand the pressure. It's too dangerous. In other words, Long Yunzhan's opinion was to give up this mission. Long Yunzhan had already sensed it. Yu Qipeng's entire person was emitting that profound yin qi. It was no wonder that everyone felt disgusted when they saw him. Long Yunzhan could roughly guess that behind Yu Qipeng there might be an unknown power. This power was mysterious and unfathomable. If the World Group's members were to forcefully charge in, not only would they not gain any benefits, they would also suffer heavy losses. Even if we give up on this mission, Yu Qipeng might not let the World Group off. This time round, the Iron Blood Warriors had embarrassed themselves in front of the Mercenary Guild, using the Iron Blood Warriors' face to exchange for the World Group's glory. The Iron Blood Warriors would never let the World Group off. Even if Mo Hanshang had said that, even if Mo Hanshang had joined the World Group. But that didn't mean that Yu Qipeng would let the World Group off. It was only a matter of time. Yu Qipeng was injured today. After returning to the courtyard, he would definitely borrow the power of the dark forces to raise his profound level. From eavesdropping on his conversation with Duke Jing, Yi Qingluo knew that Yu Qipeng was determined to get this high-grade rare mission. Yi Qingluo stood up as her vision swept across the hall. Looking down at the youths who were staring at them with serious expressions, he cleared his throat and calmly said, "Do you think we should give up on this mission?" The World Group did not belong to her alone. She didn't want to give up on this mission. But after witnessing Yu Qipeng making a deal with the dark forces, Yi Qingluo's first reaction was the World Group's brothers. She was no longer alone. Every single word and action was related to the World Group. If they were to fight with the dark forces, not only would she not be able to protect herself, but her brothers would also not be able to escape. She should discuss this mission with her brothers before making a decision. The youths pursed their lips and clenched their fists. Their hearts were also extremely complicated. There was no one who did not fear death and danger. Hearing Yi Qingluo, Long Yunzhan and the others' conversation, they were very clear on the danger of this mission. When they heard about Death God Castle, they already had the thought of retreating. Chapter 485. Yiqing Luo took in everyone's expressions. Her lips curled as her lips revealed a relieved smile. Let's make our decision tomorrow. Other than the danger of Death God Castle, this mission concerns another powerhouse and the danger has exceeded what we can handle. The youthful faces of the youths all revealed expressions of terror. Other than Death God Castle, there was another dangerous powerhouse? The usually confident Yiqing Luo said these words because in her heart, she already had the intention to give up. Although they hadn't interacted with Yiqing Luo for a long time, but these youngsters had some understanding towards Yiqing Luo's character. They were very clear that the reason why Yiqing Luo chose to give up was mainly because she was worried about them. After all, this high-grade rare mission not only involved Death God Castle. Leave all these troublesome matters till tomorrow. Today is the first day of our mercenary group registration and also the day that Han Shang joins the world group. Tonight we'll book the entire restaurant. Qiao Jin will be the host. Yan Xiaoyi stood up and her clear voice intentionally broke the heavy atmosphere in a light tone as she clapped her hands. Qiao Jin instantly stood up. Why am I the host? Clothing, food, lodging and transportation. This lady is in charge of clothing, lodging and transportation and you're freaking not happy to be in charge of food? Are you a man or not? Yan Xiaoyi disdainfully glanced sideways at Qiao Jin as she gave a cold harumph. Qiao Jin's lips twitched. Listening to these words, why did it seem like they had all become Yan Xiaoyi's sugar babies? And even doubted if he was a man? Ha. Qiao Jin's thin lips tugged as his body suddenly closed in on Yan Xiaoyi as a pair of evil eyes revolved around her. Following that, he suppressed his voice as he leaned close to her ear. Whether I'm a man or not, you can try. Simply shameless. Yan Xiaoyi's cheeks suddenly flushed with heat. That warm breath by her ear gently landed on her skin, bringing along a man's unique scent. Yan Xiaoyi's quick-witted beautiful eyes stared fiercely at Qiao Jin who suddenly closed in on her. Qiao Jin's face was instantly magnified and reflected in his eyes. Having been used to the elegant and refined Long Yun Zhan, and having seen Dmo Xian's heaven-shaking peerless elegance, Qiao Jin's looks, which could at most be considered as pleasing to the eye, seemed extremely ordinary. At least on normal days Yan Xiaoyi felt that way. But at this moment this face, which could not be considered good-looking, had an indescribable unique charm that attracted her gaze. Yan Xiaoyi only felt that her cheeks were even hotter, her heart was actually beating wildly uncontrollably. This feeling, what was going on? She usually had more intimate contact with Qiao Jin, but she had never felt so flustered. Sister Yan and Brother Qiao are going to kiss. A clear and sweet voice rang out. Kitty Li stood up with her hands clasped together, staring at Yan Xiaoyi and Qiao Jin with a face full of excitement. That pair of watery, pitch-black eyes shone with a luster of excitement. This voice caused the two people who were still staring at each other to come back to their senses. Suddenly, the two of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their eyes widened and they pushed each other away. Faster, thief. Qiao Jin, have you taken a fancy to this young lady's beauty? Go away, you're disgusting. Your mother. Yan Xiaoyi, I feel even more disgusted, all right? Seeing the two of them fighting again, Kitty Li blinked her long eyelashes in puzzlement as she tilted her head and pouted her lips in puzzlement. Weren't you going to kiss earlier? Why are you fighting again? Could it be that Kitty Li said something wrong? The youngsters roared with laughter. Chapter 486. In the evening, the group arrived majestically at Three Springs City's No. 1 Inn, Heavenly Fortune Inn. In the afternoon, Qiao Jin had already booked a table at the inn. When the group arrived, a waiter went up to welcome them and led them to the large private room on the second floor. On the left side of the second floor there were many private rooms, whereas on the right side there were 3 large private rooms. This kind of large private room was enough to accommodate 4 large tables and 100 over people. After entering the private room, it was the youngsters' first time coming to such a place and they started looking around as their eyes were filled with curiosity and joy. Very quickly, the waiter served the dishes which had been prepared earlier and several jars of wine were served. Today the brothers had temporarily thrown the matter of the mission to the back of their minds and everyone was happy, so they didn't stop drinking. Jars of wine were served one after another. After the meal, many of these youngsters who didn't know how to drink all sprawled on the table and fell asleep. There were quite a number of them who were in a drunken state as they kept shouting the world group. The last ones who were still sober were Long Yunzhan and the others. Yiqing Luo wasn't in a good mood, so she didn't reject all the wine which the brothers offered her as her head felt a little heavy. She raised her finger and pressed on her forehead as she looked at Yi Fengyu, who was quietly sleeping beside her, as she shook her head helplessly. "I'll go get the waiter and get him to bring some money back to the mansion." Yiqing Luo's body swayed as she stood up unsteadily. Long Yunzhan stared at her swaying figure as his brows creased tightly as he abruptly stood up. Long Yunzhan was also persuaded to drink quite a lot of wine. He drank more than Yiqing Luo, but at this moment he didn't look drunk at all. His footsteps were steady as he chased up to Yiqing Luo in a few steps as he held onto her arm. "Qing Luo, I'll go get him." His hand held onto Yiqing Luo's wrist. That indescribable feeling suddenly gushed up his mind. The side of his face actually felt slightly hot. The soft wrist in his palm felt completely different from the touch of Qiao Jin and the others. It made him develop a kind of impulse to hold on to this hand forever, not letting go. This thought made Long Yunzhan's heart trembled fiercely as a sliver of panic flashed past his azure blue eyes. He pulled Yiqing Luo aside and opened the private room's door. A very familiar voice came from outside the door. "Have you heard? It's about the eldest miss of the Yi family." "I've heard of her. I didn't expect her to look so pure and kind on the outside to be so slutty on the inside. She even wanted to steal her own sister's fiancé. Just how much does she lack men? I've long heard that there's something going on between her and Duke Ping." Previously, didn't that slut Yiqing Luo create a ruckus at Three Springs Sect's entrance several times? The eldest miss of the Yi clan deliberately sought death to prove her innocence. The Three Springs Sect's fate has come to an end. Sooner or later they will be kicked out of the four great sections, two little bitches, one cheap and the other reckless. These people could not conceal their disgust and ridicule towards the two young ladies of the Yi clan. Yiqing Luo could tell that the little slut in their words was referring to her. This voice, it was Lu Xuelon. As well as those high profound class 2 students. "That's not what I'm talking about." Lu Xuelon lowered her voice and said mysteriously. The other ladies immediately echoed, "Then what's the matter? Could it be that she's done something slutty again and it's even more explosive than that illicit affair with Duke Ping in the garden in broad daylight?" Chapter 487. These ladies were all unmarried young ladies from influential families. But the words that were hanging on their lips were so vulgar that it was unbearable to the ears. Luckily there were no outsiders around. If the customers were to hear this, these ladies would probably be reprimanded by their family's elders. Lu Xuelon gave a mysterious laugh. Wasn't Yiqing Qian married to Duke Ping by the monarch? But based on her unrestrained nature she has already hooked up with Second Prince. What? Second Prince? I heard that. Second Prince is preparing to request to the monarch to marry Yiqing Qian as his imperial concubine. Lu Xuelan's tone was filled with ridicule as she spat in disdain. A vixen is indeed a vixen, her ability to seduce men is not small at all. The few female students' expressions changed. Yan Zhenfei, who was standing beside Lu Xuelon, drew in a breath of cold air. "Vice President, I heard that Yiqing Qian's lower body was spoilt by Duke Ping. The female doctor said that she needs to recuperate for several months and cannot do that. Thing. Yiqing Qian can still hook up with Second Prince? Who knows?" Lu Xuelon gave a light harumph. A vixen has her own ways. As the few of them were talking, they walked to the room next to Yiqing Luo's as they pushed open the door. The group of them were just about to enter when they heard Yan Zhenfei shrieking, "Yiqing Luo? What are you doing here?" Yan Zhenfei's foot, which had stepped into the room, retracted as she pointed towards Yiqing Luo's direction with a shocked expression. When Lu Xuelon heard Yan Zhenfei's shriek, her vision immediately followed Yan Zhenfei's gaze. On seeing Yiqing Luo in the open door of the room next door, her pupils swiftly widened. Earlier, their words were all heard by Yiqing Luo. Lu Xuelon trio started to tremble uncontrollably. What happened on the second story of the library pavilion had already become a nightmare in their hearts. They hated Yiqing Luo, but they were also afraid of Ghost Doctor, who was backing her. Ghost Doctor's disciple. If they offended Yiqing Luo and she told Ghost Doctor, they would absolutely Recalling the last time when Ghost Doctor asked the administrator to dig his eyes out, their bodies trembled even more. The group of high profound class 2 students following behind didn't understand what was going on. Why was it that their high and mighty vice president, upon seeing the trash from Devil class, was scared to such a state? Didn't you just call me a slut quite happily? Lu Shuelon and Yen Zhenfei's reactions were seen clearly by Long Yunzhan, who was standing beside Yiqing Luo. His people. Why were they so afraid of Yiqing Luo? He squinted his azure blue eyes as he glanced sideways at Yiqing Luo, who wasn't drunk at all, as his eyes dimmed. He slowly loosened his grip on Yiqing Luo's hand, leaving that hand hanging by his side as his fingers clenched tightly. As though this was the only way he could hold Yiqing Luo's fragrance and touch in his palm. Say it, why aren't you continuing? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Her expression was indifferent, but the smile on her lips revealed some eerie coldness. Lu Shuelan's face was pale as she squeezed Yen Zhenfei's hand. They knew that Yiqing Luo had the Ghost Doctor behind her, but the other students in the high profound class didn't know about it. One of the female students furrowed her brows in displeasure. They were students from the high profound class. Why would they be afraid of a devil class student? Even if this Yiqing Luo was not bad looking and had some ability. But in Heavenly Academy, did they lack talented people? So what if I said you're a slut? You still don't want to admit it? A few days ago in the academy, you fainted from the fright of the killers. I don't know who saved you, perhaps. Before you were saved, you were still. Chapter 488. The group of students behind roared with laughter. Now that you mention it, I'm curious too, Student Yi. You fainted at the scene where the killers were pursuing you. You look so stunning, those killers. I'm afraid they couldn't bear to kill you just like that. Saying that, everyone's gaze towards Yiqing Luo was filled with an ambiguous look. Their commotion attracted the attention of the customers on the first floor. They all turned their gazes towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo, Three Springs Sect's trash young matriarch. There was no one in Three Springs City who didn't know her. Especially for someone who had been a trash for more than 10 years, suddenly able to cultivate and even manage to enter Heavenly Academy, setting the record for the shortest time in Heavenly Academy's entrance examinations. It even caused a stir in the entire Three Springs City. Moreover, Yiqing Luo's elder sister Yiqing Qian, her beauty had already spread far and wide. Now hearing these high profound class students talking about this hypothesis and thinking of Yiqing Qian. Who knows, the blood of the Yi family might have some unbearably lascivious genes in it. Don't say any more. Yen Zhenfei shuddered when she heard the students' voices around her. She looked at Yiqing Luo in terror and exchanged glances with Lu Shuelon before taking quick steps into the private room. If you don't want to eat, then wait outside. Those 2 female students echoed each other and successfully brainwashed the customers, believing that Yiqing Luo had been humiliated by those killers and were in a good mood. Suddenly hearing Lu Shuelan's sharp cry, they had a shock. Turning their heads to look at Lu Shuelon, they saw her pale face filled with shock towards Yiqing Luo. They frowned tightly. They simply couldn't understand why Lu Shuelon would be afraid of a devil class trash. Towards Lu Shuelon, they usually fawned over her. But that was because Lu Shuelon was now the acting vice president. Because of Yiqing Qian, because of Lu Shuiyu, their high profound class had fallen into Yiqing Luo's hands. They had become the academy's joke. Now that they had walked out of the academy in front of those people outside the academy, these 2 female students couldn't take it lying down. They were high profound class students, they had excellent aptitudes and were high up in the ranks. Why should they be suppressed by a notorious trash? Why should they become a joke in Heavenly Academy, and when they walked out of the academy, they still had to become a joke? Vice President, why are you afraid of a piece of trash? We are speaking the truth. 2 female students walked in front of Yiqing Luo and raised their hands towards her face. Slut. Slutty Yiqing Qian's sister is also a slut in her bones. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she endured the heavy feeling coming from her head. Her cold and charming eyes turned cold as she speedily moved sideways. She reached out and grabbed the wrist of the girl who was about to slap her. With a violent tug, the female student staggered towards Yiqing Luo. Pa! A crisp sound rang out on the woman's face. In Yiqing Luo's hand, a red feather fan appeared out of nowhere. She slapped the female student's face with her fan, leaving a deep mark on her face. Yiqing Luo's slap was merciless. He condensed his Xianxia and beat the female student until she spat out blood and a few of her teeth fell out. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and as though she was throwing rubbish, she threw this female student out. Motherf *her, I'm in a bad mood. This bunch of clowns insisted on coming up to be her venting bucket, so she wouldn't stand on ceremony. Trash, high profound class students, no matter how much they think highly of themselves, they can't change the nature of trash. Chapter 489. You. The other female student's face revealed an infuriated expression. The female student had not expected Yiqing Luo to make a move just like that. Usually after staying in Heavenly Academy for a long time, these students had already formed a habit, not daring to make a move rashly. Yiqing Luo had long memorized the Academy's rules in her mind. In the Academy they indeed said that they were not allowed to fight privately. But once they left the Academy could not control them. Even if Yiqing Luo released her profound qi and killed this female student directly, Heavenly Academy had no right to interfere. At most, it would be this female student's family who came to find trouble with her. This mouth, if it only has the ability to spread rumors, then this young matriarch feels that there's no use in keeping it. Yiqing Luo's eyes blinked as she gave a dainty smile. She waved the feather fan in her hand as she walked slowly and stopped in front of that female student. That slightly waving feather fan suddenly opened up. A sharp blade slid down from the fan's handle. Yiqing Luo's fingertip moved and that blade stuck onto the female student's mouth. She was smiling sweetly and innocently. But her eyes were icy cold as though it was covered with frost. The female student's body stiffened, not even daring to move her eyes. After meeting Yiqing Luo's charming eyes, her entire body turned stiff and the expression on her face revealed a terrified expression. Yiqing Luo had addressed herself as this young matriarch, which meant that her beating them up now had nothing to do with the Academy. She was using the identity of Three Springs Sect's young matriarch to give this slap and to destroy their mouths. After hearing what Yiqing Luo said, Lu Shuelon and the other two who were sitting in the next room subconsciously recalled. That day on the second story of the library pavilion, Ghost Doctor also used this kind of casual tone to ask the administrator to dig out his eyes. In their hearts they were overwhelmed with shock. These were all high profound class 2 students. If these 2 female students offended Yiqing Luo, there was a possibility that the entire high profound class 2 would suffer a calamity. Ghost Doctor's character didn't care if they were the Academy's elites or not. To stand up for his own disciple or whatever, it was just a matter of mood. You want to? The female student felt the coldness by the side of her mouth. She didn't dare to move. She blurted out 2 words. With a slight twitch of her facial muscles, the female student felt a stinging pain on her cheek, as if some kind of liquid was seeping out. She was so shocked that she didn't dare to speak again. This Yiqing Luo was simply a lunatic. Yiqing Luo would really kill her. How did we spread rumors? The female student who was thrown out stood up, clutching her chest. A few of her teeth had been broken, so when she spoke her words were extremely strange. Her voice was leaking air and her pronunciation was unclear. However, he could still hear the rage in his voice clearly. You're the same as your slutty elder sister. The female student raised one hand and pointed at the youngsters who were lying unsteadily in the private room, and then pointed at Long Yunzhan who was beside Yiqing Luo. Aren't you on intimate terms with the overlord? Why is she with another man now? Does Dizun know that we're having a secret meeting and drinking here? She suddenly laughed as her face was filled with ridicule. I don't think you and Dizun have any relationship at all. You only know how to use this face of yours to go around seducing men. Before she could finish her words, Yiqing Luo didn't move. Instead it was Long Yunzhan who was beside her, who had moved to the front of the female student in a blink of an eye. His long arms stretched out as his 5 fingers strangled the female student's neck. That pair of azure blue eyes was as resplendent as a lantern, sparkling with excitement. Under that radiance, a thick murderous intent shot out. Your mouths indeed can't be taken. Chapter 490. The last word after was clearly said. A miserable shriek was heard from the female student's mouth. The entire Heavenly Fortune Inn was especially silent. That miserable shriek, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, was extremely clear. The crowd looked at Long Yunzhan in disbelief. Some of the timid customers who couldn't stand the sight of blood directly bowed their heads and retched. There were quite a number of spectators who subconsciously rubbed their lower jaws. What did they see? Long Yunzhan's large palm rose from the female student's neck and wrapped around her lower jaw. Without any hesitation, his 5 fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That female student's lower jawbone was shattered and all her teeth were broken. Blood flowed down her mouth. That miserable shriek was her last sound. Long Yunzhan saw the blood stains on his palm and his elegant brows creased slightly as he wiped his hand on the female student's body. Following that, just like what Yiqing Luo did earlier, he casually threw her out. The crowd drew in a breath of cold air. Who on earth was this young man? His actions were so decisive. The female student who was under Yiqing Luo's feather fan instantly felt her legs go soft and could no longer stand properly. That miserable shriek was too horrifying. The one whose lower jawbone was crushed was herself. The female student didn't even dare to think about it. Her entire body collapsed onto the ground. That sharp blade drew an extremely shallow scar on her face. The female student didn't have any reaction as her eyes stared blankly in front as she panted heavily. What's the matter? Is a fight about to start? Qiao Jin's loud voice was heard from the room. Not long later, he and Yan Shaoyi walked out. The crowd's vision shifted onto the both of them. Your clothing, why? Among the high profound class 2 students, someone noticed their clothing. Following the open door, they looked inside. The entire room was filled with dozens of young men and women, all dressed in the same uniform. Apparently this was a team. Shangguan Fengyi stood in the crowd as his pupils suddenly opened wide. These are devil classes. Students. Ever since Yiqing Luo and Shangguan Liuli had a conflict, Shangguan Fengyi specially investigated everything about Yiqing Luo. According to the investigation, Yiqing Luo had been a cripple for more than 10 years. Other than a lame maidservant, she had no one close to her and no friends at all. And after she got to know Zhou Xian and started cultivating, she did not get close to anyone or talk to anyone. But now there were more than 60 people sitting in the room. To be able to drink and chat merrily, it was definitely not an ordinary friendship. The only explanation was, these people were the devil class's students, and after Yiqing Luo joined the devil class, she made friends with them. As soon as he said this, no one in the surroundings believed him. Although the group of people in front of him were drunk and in a mess, he could more or less see the restless, profound energy flowing around their bodies. These people were definitely not weak. How could they be a bunch of trash from the devil class? Yiqing Luo sneered as she lowered her eyes and swept a glance at the terrified female students who were kneeling by her feet. She then raised her eyes and looked at those people from high profound class 2. Since you're here at the inn to eat, then eat properly. If the food can't stop your mouths, I don't mind helping you to do it. Finishing her words, she lifted her leg and kicked the female student towards the direction of high profound class 2 like she was kicking a ball. The female student was caught by a group of students. At this moment, no one dared to open their mouths to say a single word. Lu Shuelon and Yan Zhenfei hid in the private room, not daring to come out. Chapter 491. Pure-colored nine-tailed fox? When the customers heard this exclamation, they all stuck their heads out to take a look outside the inn. At the entrance of the Heavenly Fortune Inn stood a snow-white white fox with its head raised proudly. That white fox's size was almost the height of the inn, and its 9 white tails kept swaying. The white fur swayed along with the wind like a white wave. Under the heavens there was only one pure white 9-tailed fox. The Overlord's sacred beast, Little Nine. Which meant the Overlord had appeared? Everyone started to stand up as they rushed to the entrance. Little Nine's appearance caused the entire Three Springs city to go into an uproar. Everyone surrounded Little Nine, looking up at the imposing and majestic 9-tailed fox, their hearts filled with reverence and respect. Little Nine represented not only the one and only sacred beast in the world, It also represented the overlord. Yiqing Luo, who was standing on the second floor, also saw little Nine standing at the entrance. Those youngsters who were still conscious behind her all stuck their heads out to take a look. This was the first time they had seen the sacred beast Nine-tailed fox. That elegant figure, that arrogant temperament, it was indeed the overlord's sacred beast. These youngsters all started to shout out as their faces, which were flushed red from the alcohol, were filled with adoration towards Zhou Xian, yearning towards the nine-tailed fox. Long Yunzhan's face was calm as he was expressionless. A pair of azure blue eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo's side, looking at the nine-tailed fox below. One could tell that when Yiqing Luo saw little Nine, her pair of frosty eyes started to circulate with a gentle glow. That devastatingly beautiful yet flamboyant, enchanting face. The contours were filled with gentleness. As though through little Nine she saw another person. Another man who occupied her body and mind. By his ears, the youngster's fervent cheers and reverence towards Zhou Xian made Long Yunzhan feel even more frustrated. All his changes were seen clearly by Qiao Jin, who was by his side. Qiao Jin saw the usually expressionless Long Yunzhan, who would not reveal any emotions on his face, was actually filled with rage. Qiao Jin's heart jumped. He knew that Long Yunzhan had feelings for Yiqing Luo. But he had not expected that after he found out that Yiqing Luo was already together with Zhou Xian, before he could dispel this thought, extinguish this thought. If this feeling caused a rift between the two of them, this was not good. Standing on the standpoint of brothers, Qiao Jin naturally hoped that Yiqing Luo would choose Long Yunzhan. However, as a bystander he could see everything clearly. It wasn't just him. All the brothers in the world group could tell. Yiqing Luo's unique feelings towards Zhou Xian was something that none of them could compare to. Long Yunzhan had no way to come between Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. Qiao Jin's expression was solemn. He was about to walk over and stand between them. But she saw Long Yunzhan's elegant brows creased slightly as he abruptly grabbed Yiqing Luo's wrist once again as he leaned close to her ear and whispered, "What's a nine-tailed fox? Riding a blue dragon is even cooler than a nine-tailed fox." Yiqing Luo was stunned as her vision slowly met Long Yunzhan's face with a question mark. Huh? Qiao Jin. The moment he said this, Long Yunzhan realized what he had said. He was dumbfounded. How could he say such a thing? He was actually jealous of a nine-tailed fox. Long Yunzhan's hand shook as he let go of Yiqing Luo's wrist. Qiao Jin leaned forward in time as his elbow knocked backwards, pushing Long Yunzhan away by an inch. Chapter 492. Yiqing Luo replied with an "oh," as she didn't doubt Qiao Jin's explanation. At this moment Yiqing Luo didn't have any other thoughts to guess the meaning behind Long Yunzhan's words. Her vision was congealed on little Nine. Little Nine was here, then where was Zhou Xian? Was he still angry? Yiqing Luo actually felt a little anxious. She pursed her pink lips and was about to jump down from the second floor's railing. But she saw a black-robed young man walking out from the surrounding crowd as he stopped beside the nine-tailed fox. He raised his head and stared at the nine-tailed fox. "Little Nine, I'll go up to invite her." Woo! Little Nine's sharp mouth moved as it gave off a soft moan. The young man stepped into Heavenly Fortune Inn, and when he raised his head, he saw the young lady standing on the second floor's railing. His brows creased as his face revealed disdain. But he still bore with this unhappiness as he leapt into the air and landed not too far away from Yiqing Luo. The sudden appearance of the young man attracted the attention of Qiao Jin and the others. Almost in an instant Qiao Jin and the others blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. High profound classes students' expressions had a huge change as all of them retreated a few steps, attempting to hide behind their classmates. This young man was too strange. They couldn't tell his profound grade from him. But from him, there was a kind of imposing manner which made one involuntarily submit to him. This imposing manner made the world group's youngsters crease their brows in puzzlement. Why did it feel so familiar? This young man was able to stand beside the nine-tailed fox and even converse with her. No matter how they looked, he wasn't simple. Wind. Suddenly, a clear female voice was heard from Qiao Jin's back. Yiqing Luo pushed aside the few people who were blocking in front of her as she squinted her eyes and fixed her gaze on that young man for a long time. This face wasn't what she remembered Wind to look like. But this imposing manner and this figure, it should be Wind. Wind. Qiao Jin was astonished. This young man Yiqing Luo knew him? He's Zhou Xian's guardian. Yiqing Luo explained as she looked towards Wind. You and little Nine. Overlord asked me to fetch Miss Yi for a gathering. Wind directly interrupted Yiqing Luo's words. Gathering? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. If Dmo Xian wanted to see her, he would always appear beside her directly. Since when did he need to send little Nine and Wind over to create such a huge scene? Wait a minute. Battle formation? Yiqing Luo's breathing suddenly stopped as her heartbeat sped up. Dmo Xian wouldn't be doing it on purpose, right? Purposely creating such a big scene, sending out protectors and little Jiao, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he invited her to a gathering. This was a declaration to the entire Three Springs city. Yiqing Luo had a close relationship with the Overlord. Her thigh was the Overlord. Could it be Dmo Xian had always been by her side and had seen the conflict between her and the high profound class students? In his way, David protected her. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a faint smile as she looked towards Qiao Jin and the others. I'll head over first. Qiao Jin and the others waved their hands. Yiqing Luo leaped down from the second floor and landed beside the nine-tailed fox. That soft white tail curled up Yiqing Luo and placed her firmly on its back. The surrounding people started to draw in breaths as well as those pairs of envious gazes. The one and only sacred beast nine-tailed fox had become this woman's mount. Those students from the high profound class were even more dumbfounded. Especially those two female students who provoked Yiqing Luo, their faces were ashen. Earlier they were still saying that Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had no relationship at all. Now, Dmo Xian had sent his own war pet and guardian over to personally invite Yiqing Luo. That incomparably valuable war pet, even voluntarily became Yiqing Luo's mount. Chapter 493. Wind, aren't you leaving together? Yiqing Luo looked at Wind, who was still standing on the second floor, as she asked. Wind's expression seemed to have turned gloomy as he snorted. Other than the Overlord, no one else can sit on little Nine's back. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. The hand which was on little Nine's back gently brushed past the soft white fur on its back. Other than Dmo Xian, no one else could sit on little Nine's back. But from the first time she met little Nine, she had been accepted by little Nine. Was it because of Dmo Xian? Why did she have a feeling that she had been reserved by Dmo Xian right from the start? Just thinking about it made her a little shy. Ah Feng's words once again shocked the surrounding onlookers. Other than the Overlord, no one else could sit on the noble nine-tailed fox's back. But Yiqing Luo was automatically rolled onto the back by the nine-tailed fox. This was enough to show how much the Overlord valued her. What is the relationship between Yi family's seventh miss and the Overlord? I heard that they are master and disciple, but this feeling doesn't seem like master and disciple. Yes, seventh miss. Didn't she set a marriage agreement with Duke Ping, but her sister stole her away? It's only been a few days and yes, seventh miss and the Overlord. As they discussed, the discussion changed the topic. Not knowing who started it, someone actually started to compare Yiqing Jian and Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Jian's slutty behavior had spread far and wide. These surrounding crowd all believed that Yi family's young miss and Yiqing Jian were slutty. But because of the Overlord's face, they didn't say it out loud. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly as she dug her ears. Her half-squinted eyes reflected a sharp blade as she looked at the commoners who were gathering below. The relationship between me and the Overlord has nothing to do with you. If this mouth only knows how to make irresponsible remarks, then I don't mind leading my brothers to seal your mouths tightly. Her sonorous and powerful voice was extremely dignified. Every single word was like a huge bell, striking heavily on their eardrums, their hearts. The surrounding 100 miles around heavenly fortune fell into silence. The silence that surrendered to Yiqing Luo's majestic aura. Yiqing Luo scoffed and patted little Nine's back. Little Nine, let's go. As his voice fell, a stream of qi rose from little Nine's four limbs. In the blink of an eye, he had already leaped into the sky, turned into a white shadow and disappeared from everyone's line of sight. At this moment, Ah Feng glanced sideways at the hyperfound class students and finally stopped at Lu Xuelan. Lu Xuelan's entire body trembled. She was terrified and her eyes were filled with shock. However, Ah Feng only paused for a few breaths before looking away. Lord Dizun asked me to tell you to bring our drunk brothers back to the attic to have a good rest. After saying this, Ah Feng turned around and jumped down from the first floor, leaving the Tianfu in directly. Everyone was shocked. What did these people have to do with the Overlord? Why does it feel like they have a very close relationship with the Overlord? Shangguan Fangyi, who had previously suspected that they were students of the devil class, also turned pale. So, these people were all Dmo Xian's men. It was Dmo Xian who had sent people from the Imperial Palace to form a team for Yiqing Luo. Qiao Jin and the others were first stunned, as they didn't understand what was going on. Their brains spun and they immediately understood the Overlord's intention. If the Hyperfound Class 2 students found out that they were students of the Devil class, then the Academy would definitely take notice of the Devil class. If before the inter-class competition, the director forcefully allocated them into different classes, then all the hard work that the Devil class had put in for so many years would be meaningless. Rather than being guessed that they were students of the Devil class, it would be better to be misunderstood as people from the Imperial Palace. In this way, at least in future when they accepted the mercenary group's missions, they wouldn't need to think of ways to hide. Chapter 494. Little Nine came to a stop in a garden filled with beautiful flowers. Yiqing Luo had never been to this place before. As far as the eye could see, there were all kinds of flowers blooming brilliantly. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowers. When Yiqing Luo turned back, Little Nine's figure was no longer by her side. Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings and there wasn't a single figure in sight. What was Dmo Xian up to? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and was about to follow the path ahead to look for Dmo Xian. Suddenly she felt a weight on her shoulder and a warm body completely wrapped around her in his arms. That fresh and elegant sandalwood scent, mixed with the fresh floral scent, seeped into her nose and was especially intoxicating. It was just a day of not seeing each other. When she felt the warmth of the man behind her, Yiqing Luo actually had a kind of... The empty space in her heart was filled up. Satisfied. Extremely satisfied. Obviously, it wasn't the first time they had not met for such a long time. But this time she missed him so much. Perhaps it was because this time she was the one who made Dmo Xian leave. Not knowing why, Yiqing Luo's eyes were slightly red and the tip of her nose was a little sour. She bit her lips and struggled to turn around from the man's arms. Raising her head, a pair of watery eyes stared deeply at the man's peerless face. This look made Yiqing Luo stunned. His face was as handsome as usual. His eyes were glistening, suffused with a current that could take one's soul away. But, not knowing why, Yiqing Luo felt that there was a trace of exhaustion between his brows. A very, very light exhaustion. This kind of him looked extremely lazy. Seeing Yiqing Luo staring at him in a daze, Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up as his fingertips caressed Yiqing Luo's face. Why looking at me in a daze? His deep voice was sexy and magnetic. Like a feather, constantly teasing Yiqing Luo's heart. I thought, you are angry with me and not willing to talk to me. Yiqing Luo hugged his waist and buried her face in his chest. Dmo Xian's large palm covered the back of Yiqing Luo's head as his thin lips curled into an even more seductive arc. I also thought I would be angry with you. The hand which he circled around Yiqing Luo's waist increased in strength. He thought he would be angry. He was angry that when Yiqing Luo made the decision she had never thought about his feelings. He was angry that Yiqing Luo didn't listen to his advice and insisted on taking the risk. He was angry that Yiqing Luo didn't care about her own safety, making him worried but helpless. He was angry but he could not bear to be angry. The moment he forcefully stopped Yiqing Luo from accepting the mission and turned around to leave, he regretted it. But Dmo Xian knew that if he were to turn back, Yiqing Luo would not hesitate to choose to proceed with the mission immediately. You're too competitive. Dmo Xian sighed softly as his 5 fingers plunged into Yiqing Luo's hair, as his fingertips gently caressed her hair. I know, even if I really stopped you from going to Death God Castle, your heart is still unable to let go of this mission. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and had no words to refute. Indeed, in order to not let Damo Xian worry, she could give up this task. But in her heart she could not truly let go of this task. In her world there was no such thing as giving up. Perhaps it could be said that she had never met anyone who could make her give up on her decision. If you're unhappy, I can. Yiqing Luo buried her head and rubbed against his chest. It was just a mission, it could not be compared to Damo Xian. Chapter 495. Damo Xian's fingers were slender and fair. Perhaps it was because he had been cultivating for many years, his fingertips were slightly calloused. When it rubbed against Yiqing Luo's tender lips, it actually brought along a burst of electric current. Yiqing Luo only felt a ball of raging fire burning on her lips. His pure and deep peach blossom eyes that were like obsidian rippled with ripples. Yiqing Luo turned her head away, trying to avoid Damo Xian's fingers. But he increased his strength as his fingertips rubbed against her lips. His fingertips were faintly hooking her lips. Yiqing Luo's throat tightened and she had just opened her mouth when his fingers brushed past her pearly white teeth. This action made Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red. She flew into a rage out of embarrassment as she opened her mouth and bit the man's fingers as she stared at him resentfully. Biting the man's fingers, her words were unclear. Stop fooling around. Damo Xian's face was filled with an unconcealable smile. The tiredness between his brows was also dispelled in his smile. He lowered his head as he got closer to Yiqing Luo. His smile was filled with evilness. His voice was filled with bewitchment. What is Lil Luo trying to say? The warm breath sprayed onto her neck. Yiqing Luo couldn't take this kind of teasing as both her hands struggled to push against the man's chest. It's not that I don't rely on you, but at the same time when I rely on you, I want to improve, want to become stronger, want to become your reliance. A soft sigh was heard from the top of her head. Damo Xian helplessly let go of Yiqing Luo as his face was filled with a helpless expression. I knew it. I would eventually be convinced by you. A piece of white cloth landed into Yiqing Luo's hands. Yiqing Luo was puzzled as she opened up the white cloth. When she saw the pictures on the white cloth, she was completely dazed. This is... Yiqing Luo's breathing suddenly turned hurried as her fingers clenched the white cloth tightly as she raised her eyes and stared at Damo Xian. This is Death God Castle's map? This was a piece of map. On it was a detailed drawing of a place's layout. Even the mechanisms and arrays in every place were clearly marked. My entire life has been ruined by you. Damo Xian helplessly encircled Yiqing Luo in his arms again. His shimmering peach blossom eyes seemed to be carrying thousands of spring water. Although his voice was filled with helplessness, it was possible to hear the strong doting under the helplessness. This kind of pampering could only be enjoyed by Yiqing Luo alone. Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to be pinched by something. She stared at the map in her hand. Yiqing Luo held a thin white cloth in her hand and felt as though it weighed 1,000 kilograms. It was so heavy that she found it difficult to breathe. After he stopped her from taking the mission, he left angrily. He wasn't really angry, he just didn't want to talk to her. Instead, he drew the entire map of Death God Castle for her. To reduce the chances of her getting hurt. Clearly, he was extremely worried and didn't want her to go to Death God Castle for this mission. But in order to make her happy, in order to let her buy the mission, he had to put his heart at ease. In the end, he compromised. How could she not be moved by such a man? How could she not fall for him? He was always like this. His casual words and actions for her always stirred her heart, making her unable to think about anything else. Ah Xian, thank you. Out of thousands of words, only this sentence was able to express the feeling in her heart. Yiqing Luo's arms circled around Damo Xian's neck as she proactively offered her pink lips. She shut her eyes and a crystal-clear tear rolled down from the corner of her eye. Chapter 496. A kiss lingering. Damo Xian seemed to want to knead her into his bones and blood as his arms wrapped around her tightly. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were flushed red and her eyes were like silk as she fell into his arms. A pair of slender hands that were wrapped around Damo Xian's neck rested weakly on his chest. In her ears, the man's deep voice, as if tasting a jar of sweet wine, so seeping into her heart, making her dizzy, making her intoxicated. Lil Luo, don't thank me. Why don't you repay me with your body? Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. His heart violently trembled and then began to beat faster. She stared blankly at Dimo Xian's pair of affectionate eyes. That scorching gaze was like a flame, burning her body and mind. He was serious. Was this a marriage proposal? Did he mean that he wanted to marry her? Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red and those curly long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. What was concealed was a pair of shy and charming eyes. Marrying Dimo Xian was something that she had never thought about. He only felt that it was enough for two people to be together, to know each other, to love each other. Little Luo, Dimo Xian's slender fingers clasped onto her lower jaw, and that jet-black pupils gradually turned dense. Don't tell me you've never thought of becoming my wife? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes innocently. We haven't known each other for long and we don't have a complete understanding of each other. Talking about marriage. Isn't it a little too early? It's not early. Without any hesitation, he directly interrupted Yiqing Luo's words. From the moment I got together with you, I had already decided to accompany you for life. That voice was sonorous and firm. Yiqing Luo's heart was shaken once again. His heart was in a mess, so messed up that he couldn't think of anything else. As expected, Qiao Jin and the others were right. Beside Dimo Xian, she was like a woman, a real woman. He had always been independent and was used to being alone. But in front of Dimo Xian, there was a woman's emotions and mentality. This kind of feeling only Dimo Xian could give her. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers curled up Dimo Xian's robe bit by bit. She raised her head and gazed at Dimo Xian's smooth chin, the elegant lines. Ah Xian, how long? Is a lifetime? However long you want, I'll let you. Dimo Xian caressed her cheek. His fingertips were slightly cold and his pair of peach blossom eyes were so gentle that it seemed as if water could be squeezed out. His gaze became increasingly fiery. Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. It was as long as he wanted it to be. She knew that Dimo Xian was never one to make promises recklessly. The fact that he said those words represented his determination. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with warmth because of Dimo Xian's words. She held on to Dimo Xian's hand, her 5 fingers interlocked with his. Her smiling eyes gazed at the hands of the two people who were holding each other's hands. She smiled and said, "All right, I'm willing to marry you." Dimo Xian was overjoyed. His large palm grasped Yiqing Luo's little hand. His long arms tightened, his long and narrow peach blossom eyes slightly raised. That head of cloud-like black hair was unbound and scattered over his half-exposed chest. His entire person looked extremely seductive. Lil Luo, you're really... Before he could finish his words. But he saw Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up slightly as a crafty look flashed past her lively eyes. But, there's a prerequisite to marry you. Dimo Xian narrowed his eyes, realizing that Yiqing Luo's following words were absolutely not what he wanted to hear. Chapter 497. Dimo Xian's status was too distinguished. As Dimo Xian's wife, the mistress of the imperial palace, she must have the ability to match her status. Even if Dimo Xian didn't mind. But it didn't mean that the people in the imperial palace didn't mind. Just like Wind. She could tell that Wind didn't have any good feelings towards her. It could even be described as disdain. She didn't blame Wind for looking at her in this way. It was because Wind valued Dimo Xian and the imperial palace that he developed enmity towards her. If she had the ability to match with Dimo Xian, and had the qualification to become the mistress of the imperial palace, Wind would definitely not develop such feelings. Ah Xian, wait for me. When I have the qualification to stand by your side, when I have the qualification to become the mistress of the imperial palace, when everyone believes in me, then let's get married, alright? Yiqing Luo's lips rose slightly, her eyes were filled with a luster, revealing a resolute look. She and Dimo Xian were actually the same type of people. From the moment they decided to be together, she had no intention to leave Dimo Xian. The current them was only lacking a status. Today's words, I will remember it in my heart. Yiqing Luo's eyes, like the vast firmament, was dyed with the luster of stars, that resplendent, that unwavering. She stretched out her other hand and twirled a lock of Zhou Xian's black hair. That wispy black hair curled around her slender and fair fingers. Zhou Xian, I'm not a generous woman and I'm narrow-minded. If you're willing to wait for me, no matter how long the road ahead is, I will always be by your side and will always pester you. Zhou Xian's narrow long eyes curved as it grew deeper. Gazing at the lady in his arms, no matter how resplendent it was, it couldn't be compared to the dazzling gleam in her eyes. Her cheeks were flushed as her face was filled with shyness. But she had to stubbornly put on a fierce look, saying words that moved his heart. Unfortunately, he loved this look of Yiqing Luo's. Loved to the bones. He had always felt that Yiqing Luo had a kind of magical power. That magnetic attraction enticing him bit by bit, to place her in his eyes into his heart. Just as Zhou Xian was gazing deeply at Yiqing Luo's fierce look, his body suddenly leaned backwards. He was pushed into the bushes. Shortly after, the woman's soft and delicate body covered his. Because of the two people's actions, the flowers in the surroundings lifted up circles of flower petals and drifted with the wind. Yiqing Luo sat on his abdomen with one hand on his chest, her 5 fingers gripped tightly onto his lapel. So, Zhou Xian, you can't escape. Zhou Xian's arms circled around her waist as he laid on the ground. His jet black hair spread out, which made his face look even more magnificent. His lips curled as he said word by word, Yiqing Luo, you'd better be mentally prepared. Zhou Xian will never let you off in this lifetime. Yiqing Luo nodded and imitated the way he used to tease her as she caressed his lips. Then, let's continue pestering each other till death. The two of them looked at each other and smiled warmly. Her fingers hooked onto Zhou Xian's chin as she bent down and with a sweet smile she kissed his lips. This kiss was filled with passion. At the same time in the mansion, Long Yunzhan and the others who were sober, along with a few waiters from Heavenly Fortune Inn, carried the drunk youngsters back to their respective rooms. With the identity of Imperial Palace's people, there was no need for them to be secretive, not daring to let others know where they were staying. And it was because they were related to the Imperial Palace that the waiter's attitude towards them was diligent and earnest, almost not daring to accept money. Seeing the eager waiters coming and going, Long Yunzhan's expression turned darker. Chapter 498. Long Yunzhan's brows creased slightly as he heard the voice and looked over. He saw Qiao Jin standing by his side with one hand on his shoulder. He glanced sideways and met Qiao Jin's eyes. His elegant brows creased even tighter. Qiao Jin's gaze towards him was unprecedentedly solemn and serious. As though he had seen through his soul, seeing through his deepest thoughts. This feeling of having all his thoughts seen through made Long Yunzhan very unhappy. His heart produced a flustered feeling. In his heart, what secret was he hiding? Why was he so against the feeling of Qiao Jin seeing through him? Group leader. Qiao Jin opened his mouth solemnly as the fingers on his shoulder tightened a little. There's something regarding Yiqing Luo I want to discuss with you. Long Yunzhan pursed his lips as he nodded indifferently. The two of them walked into Long Yunzhan's room one after another. Qiao Jin's expression was calm as he stared at Long Yunzhan without blinking. Do you want to develop the world group? Long Yunzhan narrowed his eyes, not understanding the meaning behind Qiao Jin's words. You're the belief of the students in Devil Class. After Yiqing Luo came to Devil Class, she's the hope of Devil Class students. Qiao Jin walked to the chair and sat down. His voice was very soft and indifferent without any emotions. I've always thought that the reason why we train Devil Class students is to make them strong, to let them believe in themselves that they're not trash. Qiao Jin raised his eyes and stared at Long Yunzhan, who was standing by the side with his hands behind his back. Although, I know that the reason why you train Devil Class isn't so simple. Long Yunzhan was stunned. Between them, they had never asked each other the reason why they stayed in Devil Class. From first meeting to getting to know each other through Discord and finally becoming brothers. Everything seemed to be going with the flow. This was the first time they were discussing the reason why they trained Devil Class. No matter what your reason is, I know that your heart towards everyone is sincere. Qiao Jin continued, you're not someone who is good at expressing your thoughts. Perhaps even you yourself don't know your own thoughts. Long Yunzhan's heart trembled fiercely. Qiao Jin actually understood him so well. Devil class or the world group, we are a team, a collective. We have belief, we have hope. With the both of you leading devil class, the world group, it's destined to be extraordinary. Qiao Jin's gaze gradually became gentle. Devil class is able to be so harmonious now, forming the world group. All these are all because of Qing Luo's hope. His deep eyes flickered slightly and he placed his hands on the wooden table. His face, which could not be considered handsome, was solemn and respectful. Ajahn, we have a good brother. A very, very good brother. Qiao Jin stared into Long Yunzhan's eyes as he enunciated each word clearly. There were some things that he couldn't say too clearly. If Yiqing Luo didn't have Damo Xian by her side, he could remind Long Yunzhan, or even help Long Yunzhan chase after Yiqing Luo. But there were no ifs. Their relationship with Yiqing Luo could only stop at the level of brothers. Only by using these two words would they be able to walk for a longer period of time. Perhaps it was because Qiao Jin emphasized the word brother. It hinted at something to Long Yunzhan, and Long Yunzhan seemed to understand something. That pair of azure blue eyes flickered with a slightly dim luster. His eyelids drooped as his voice was cold and emotionless. And Qing Luo is indeed a very good brother. Indeed very good. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's appearance, devil class would probably still not know what unity was until now. There would still be that mentality of the weak being prey to the strong. It was Yiqing Luo, this ray of hope, that still entered devil class. They were brothers, which meant they could only be brothers. Chapter 499. The next day in the mansion. The youths were dressed neatly and lined up in the courtyard, listening to Yan Shaoyi's slogan as they did their morning exercise. When Yiqing Luo and Damo Xian walked into the mansion hand in hand, they heard a series of impassioned young voices. Vaguely, a clear voice could be heard. Do you usually have to start training so early? I want to train with you. I really didn't choose the wrong person. I made the right choice to join this world group. Stepping into the courtyard, Zhou Xian saw rows of youths stretching their bodies. Mo Han Shang changed into the world group's uniform and stood in the middle of the group. It seemed that after last night's meal and drinking, his relationship with his brothers had deepened a lot. When the youngsters heard the commotion, they all turned towards Yiqing Luo's direction. When they saw Yiqing Luo and Damo Xian, although the youngsters didn't stop what they were doing, but their pair of eyes were staring straight at Yiqing Luo. Finally, it landed on her and Damo Xian's interlocked fingers. The arch. Qiao Jin took the lead to go up as he cupped his fists towards Damo Xian as he greeted him. Following that, his vision shifted onto Yiqing Luo as his eyes were filled with ridicule. Qing Luo, does this mean that you've settled the overlord? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. Not returning for an entire night, a man and a woman alone, tisk tisk. Yan Shaoyi raised her eyebrows and laughed. This tease caused the youths who were still doing their morning exercise to laugh out loud. Damo Xian's face was plastered with human skin. His facial features were ordinary, but the imposing manner of his whole body was awe-inspiring. He looked calmly at the youths in the courtyard and smiled. We are all brothers of Lil Luo. There is no need to be so courteous. Just call me Brother D. The youths were dumbfounded. All of them stopped their stretching actions and stared at Damo Xian in shock. He seemed to be unable to believe what he had just heard. Calling Dizun his brother? Are you sure this isn't an illusion? The youths could no longer remain calm. What a joke. Who could remain calm when they could be brothers with His Majesty, the Overlord, who was so high and mighty that everyone wanted to ride on his coattails? They were able to get to know the Overlord and see the Overlord himself. That was all thanks to Qing Luo. Even Qiao Jin was stunned by the words Brother D. Just as everyone was staring at Damo Xian, their faces filled with worship, they heard a cold voice. Lord D has already agreed to the world group to accept this high-grade rare mission? This voice was the guild leader's voice. The youths all turned their heads to look at Long Yunzhan. In the hearts of the youths, Long Yunzhan was their faith, their boss. When they heard Long Yunzhan still call him Dizun respectfully, they naturally suppressed the excitement they felt from calling him brother. After hearing Long Yunzhan's question, the smiles on the faces of the youths gradually froze. Advanced Rare Quest. The Mission to Death God Castle. Yiqing Luo gave them a night's time to think. But they were so drunk last night that they didn't even think about it. It was just that when they woke up this morning, they endured the hangover and discussed it together. But in his heart he was still uncertain. The moment Long Yunzhan brought up this topic, the youth started to get nervous again. Yes, Zhou Xian agreed. Yiqing Luo's vision swept across the courtyard, those young and tender-looking slightly pale faces. Have you all thought it through? When the youngsters met Yiqing Luo's gaze, they all lowered their eyelids. They had been undergoing closed-door training in Devil class for the past few years. Actual combat training was merely going to Heavenly Training Forest for simple practical training. They were confident that they were no longer the waste in the past. After all, they were just kids who hadn't seen the world. Chapter 500. Go. Why shouldn't we go? Under the silence, Tong Ziqing's brows creased tightly as her cold expression was filled with determination. We are members of the World Group, members who are going to become the #1 mercenary group in future, the World Group. It's just a mission and we're afraid of this and that. Her tone was filled with impatience. Didn't you say that we should all work together and work hard to improve? Why is it that when we meet with any danger all of you become like cowards? After Tong Ziqing finished her words, those youngsters all raised their heads as their emotions were complicated. I agree with Sister Ziqing's words. And Ruopan, who was standing at the corner of the group, took a step forward. Her pair of gentle eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking as she spoke in a serious tone. We are Devil Class's students, members of the World Group. If a mission is enough to scare us until we stop here, then there's no meaning in us establishing the World Group. The youngsters looked at each other in dismay as their eyes sparkled. Their gazes subconsciously shot towards Qiao Jin and the others. They were used to having the 4 members of the class committee making decisions for them, and this habit had already seeped into their bones. But Qiao Jin and the others didn't open their mouths to speak. Qiao Jin and the others only stood there as though this matter didn't concern them. Their hearts started to palpitate apprehensively. Seeing these youngsters' ardent gazes, Qiao Jin and the others finally understood why Yiqing Luo intentionally let these youngsters choose on their own. As Devil Class's students, members of the World Group, following the group leader's orders and listening obediently was indeed a good thing. But they were humans, an individual, everyone's brothers. They didn't know how to think for themselves, only following orders and relying on their decisions. If this went on, the World Group would only become a tool to complete the mission. Without the youngsters' vitality and passion. At this moment, Qiao Jin couldn't help but sigh at Yiqing Luo's valiance. In just a short 1 month she had found out all the problems which they hadn't been able to find out for the past few years. Furthermore, she used the simplest and crudest method to correct these problems. In the courtyard there was a deathly silence. Yiqing Luo let go of Dmo Xian's hand as she slowly walked towards the youngsters. Her charming eyes seemed as though it was decorated with stars, extremely dazzling. This wisp of dazzling light was like a sharp blade that deeply sliced towards the enemy in their hearts. Soon after, he heard your cold voice floating in the courtyard. This time we didn't go home. Instead we gathered here and formed a mercenary group. What is the purpose of this? The youths looked at each other. After a long time a young man's voice trembled. It's for actual combat training. Someone said the first sentence and a few others followed. In order to participate in the interclass competition 8 months later, I'll form a mercenary group to accept missions and enrich my combat experience. In order to make myself stronger so that I can take the championship in the interclass competition 8 months from now. As they spoke, the expressions on their faces gradually changed from uneasiness to a complicated one. Slowly it became quiet. It was until the young man quietened down when Yiqing Luo bore an extremely shallow smile as she nodded her head. Yes, for actual combat training, to enrich your combat experience, to make you stronger. Her smile was obviously very shallow. Her tone was clearly indifferent. Her face was clearly devoid of emotion. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.